Shalom. In this week's Sedra is Sedras Re'eh. In order to understand the interesting point in this week's Sedra, I'd like to tell you the story about Jeff. Jeff was a hiker. I lived here in Mitzvah Yericho. And Jeff looked up the side of the mountain this wonderful day and wondered if his idea of hiking and learning was really such a great idea in the end after all. He had taken a few bottles of water with him in his chumash and hoped to hike up one of the glorious mountains surrounding Mitzvah Yericho and study this week's Sedra on top of the mountain. As he finally reached the crescent of this mountain, Jeff took out his chumash and read from this week's Sedra. Excuse me while I quote what he read. It will be that the place of the Lord your God will choose in which to establish his name. There you shall bring all that I am commanding you to offer, your offerings, and all of the various gifts that Jews bring at the Beis HaMikdash. Based on this verse, the Rambam wrote that once the temple was built in Jerusalem, it became forbidden to build a sanctuary for God or offer sacrifices in any other place. Jeff had the foresight to bring along a copy of the Rambam's Mishnah Torah with him. In his writings about the temple in Jerusalem, the Rambam wrote that there is no sanctuary at all for all generations except in Jerusalem, and especially on Mount Moriah. As it is stated, and David declared that the house of the Lord God, and this is the altar for the burnt offerings of Israel, and it is stated, this is my resting place forever. It is universally accepted, the Rambam wrote, that the place on which David and Solomon built the altar, the threshing floor of Ornan, who King David bought it from, is the location where Abraham built the altar on which he prepared Isaac for the sacrifice. Noah also built an altar at the same location when he left the ark. It was also the place on the altar which Cain and Hevel brought sacrifices. Adam, the first man, offered a sacrifice there and was created on that very same spot. Jeff knew that Jews traveled through the desert with their tabernacle, the Mishkan. When they arrived in Eretz Yisrael, they used the tabernacle until King David built the temple, some 700 to 1,000 years later. The Rambam described this period. After the Jews entered the land of Israel, they erected the tabernacle in Gilgal during the 14 years in which they conquered and divided the land. From there, they came to Shiloh, built a house of stone, and spread the curtains of the sanctuary over it. Afterwards, they came to Nov and built the sanctuary. When Shmuel died, it was destroyed, and they came to Givon and there built a sanctuary. From Givon, they came to the eternal structure, the temple that we're so familiar with in Jerusalem. Reminded of the lead-up to the building of the temple in Jerusalem, Jeff returned to his Chumash and read Rashi's comments on this verse. A few verses earlier, Rashi pointed out, the same expression forbidding offerings outside of one area is stated, but referring to the town of Shiloh. But in this verse, the one that we had read when we opened up our Chumash, is stated referring to Jerusalem. Accordingly, the two are separated to permit sacrificing outside of Jerusalem during the period between the existence of the tabernacle in Shiloh and the construction of the temple in Jerusalem, meaning that in the intermediate period when there was no sanctuary, people could offer sacrifices and build an altar wherever they wanted. This is untrue of once the temple was built in Jerusalem. Then, no matter what, they couldn't. Jeff looked up from his perch on the top of the mountain and saw Jerusalem off in the distance. He recognized that Jerusalem is a transformative city. During the transition from place to place, offerings were permitted outside of a central location. But once the temple in Jerusalem was built, all offerings were eternally forbidden in any other place, even after the temple was destroyed. Once established, Jerusalem had an eternal hold on the Jewish people. That hold was one that Jeff recognized that he knew that the Jews could never let go of. Shabbat Shalom.